Indiana Gregg. Really enjoyed my conversation with Indy. She's an entrepreneur, a tech entrepreneur. But what's really different is that 15 years ago, she got a record deal. And she's an artist. You can hear her music and see her videos. But she always been in tech. She's from the U.S. and her mother was brought her to church, and music was always part of her world. But really loved technology. So she soon after touring and the record deals, she pivoted into some tech platforms. She created a beauty product for a while during the recession, and then she went back now, and she's the CEO of Wedo, a fantastic platform that helps the gig economy get paid much better. And work a bit more, creatively. But just an inspiring story, Indy is, of perseverance and longevity through all this time. She's been able to pivot from business to business. Just the true entrepreneurial spirit is inside Indy. She's got a lot of great advice. Her view on discipline, very, very interesting, given her, artistic background, but still very structured and still very science approach to problems and business creation. Great conversation with Indiana Gregg. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Excited to talk to you today, Indiana Gregg. Indy, thank you for your time. So what are the biggest commonalities, parallels between the music industry and entrepreneurship?
Oh, probably grit. I think that's got to be the biggest one. It takes a lot of grit and persistence, either or, if you're going to be in the music industry or if you're going to start a startup in technology. Um, Even more so in both areas. You got to be crazy. I think if you're visionary and crazy, you get by with a lot more, and you really express the value proposition that you offer in both industries. So,
It would seem to me that in the music industry, being a musician, being a performer, it seems to me you have still a lot less control than being an entrepreneur. Even if you have fans, there's still, there's so many people that are involved that you're needed to be successful. Whereas, I don't know, I could be wrong. As an entrepreneur, you need your customers. Of course, you need employees, you need other things. It just seems like you have a little more control being an entrepreneur. Just my hunch.
I think it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're an innovator with music, uh, you're still going to need more than just you. There are a lot of levers, both places. So you need a team around you in both areas. You need uh, great people who are great at marketing. If you're not, you need music that will sell or that will hit a target market. You can't do everything yourself as a musician. Of course, you need the rest of the band, just like you would as an entrepreneur. I think there are more parallels than most people think. And I think likewise, in especially in technology innovation, uh, headcount and team are parallel to the type of headcount and team you'll need to grow as an artist. So I think that they draw multiple parallels.
Mm, hmm. At the end of the day, it's still a business, isn't it? Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's still a business. You were brought up here in the States. You know, your music was through the church with your mom, and but you quickly after having some success, you were touring for a while, and um, great stories there that I got to hear from you. But then you made the pivot to technology, where you're on these boards, and there you got an unflattering name from some of the males, and you kind of made your pivot.
Yeah, I think, well, I was already in technology prior to going into music.
Ah,
Music was kind of a space where I went, oh, I've got these songs, I'll go pitch them, and I happened to get a record deal, and it was it wasn't something that I planned to do in my career. It was just something that was a great opportunity that I was able to leverage later. So I started a platform following being an artist and touring for the music industry, and was able to grow and scale that platform. I learned a ton about uh, business and scaling technology at the time, and that then later translated into.
you were always in technology, even when you were got your record deal.
Yeah, that's right. So, following doing some touring, I noticed that there was a real problem in the market in terms of aggregating all the different components of the music industry. So, started a platform that had musicians, publishers, record labels, and all the peripheries around it into a marketplace that we were able to scale to around 14.5 million users.
Wow.
And following that, I spent around a decade working in the cosmetics industry, importing and exporting, created a nail care products, and we were able to turn over a million the first year and grow that. And then I worked following that as a consultant, like sitting on the boards and working in operations and helping people build products. And that's really what brought me to where I am today, is having understood the frustrations of what it's like to be a self-employed entrepreneur, aside from the struggles that startups have, and how to create a system that could have an impact on the future of work.
It's amazing to me, Indy, how you just kind of went from. I mean, you were always in technology, but then talk. How did you make the pivot into the beauty industry and the nail? I mean, that's just you just kind of glanced over it there, but it's incredible to me that you did that for 10 years.
Yeah, I think that what happened was there was this thing called the recession globally.
Uh,
And I had been working as a consultant for another company in the beauty industry. And I realized, well, there's probably a really great niche market for UV nail gel and UV, kits, and no one else was doing it. And at the time, there was these new aggregators that popped into market like Groupon, and so I got my first deal on Groupon, and didn't have much money, had around 100,000 in cash to invest in it, and built a product and started selling it there, and had these huge numbers of orders because I worked out, well, women aren't going to go to the nail salon during a recession. And
mm.
that gave us a lot of wiggle room with pretty excellent margins that there are in the beauty industry, with a kit that wasn't available on market at that moment in time. Um, and so was able to grow that into multiple colors, multiple types of lamps, multiple at-home use cases, shipping, drop shipping, moving product from country to country as
Mm.
hubs, and that sort of thing. So that was just out of creativity's interest. I'm really bad at doing my nails. I still am, but I learned very quickly, and we were able to create a really awesome set of products through Groove Nail Care at the time.
And to actually create, like, source like you said, the lamps and the product. What is that process? Are you testing stuff? What is that process like? I've never created anything like a product like that. Everything's been digital for me.
Yeah, so with that, it was really about building out product. A lot of our sourcing was in China and in Mexico. We tested multiple factories. I had a sourcing agent who had worked on a digital audio stereo who sourced chips, and she introduced me to a couple major suppliers, and we were able to very quickly build out on a fairly decent scale, thousands of products
Wow.
within the space of a few years. And it's phenomenal. You run into all sorts of problems to solve when you're importing huge containers of product and moving it around and holding it in customs and excise,
Mm.
getting EORI numbers so you can distribute within the European Union, and the same with Canada and the United States, and customs holding. But it was an amazing first opportunity to learn what supply chain work looks like, and how to
Mm.
expedite and run that more efficiently, which leads to new innovations that can be used in that industry as well. I just worked on a blockchain for the beauty industry not long ago, a couple years ago. So there's everything that you learn as you go along these routes or paths contributes to what you could potentially do next. And I found it fascinating. Um, Although, like I said, I'm not really into beauty. I like to get my nails done or do my nails. It's not something I was fabulous at, but I was really good at building products that people wanted. And that was just my first and last real touch point with physical product. I'm more in technology, more into building
Mm.
applications that serve people, um, easier to leverage. But at the time, I was kind of down and pissed off at the digital world, the long tail of advertising, monetization chains, and the way that, for example, the gig and freelance economy was going, where they take 20% of your income. I was just annoyed. So I was like, I'll just sell physical products until this recession is over. And that's what I did.
So this is around 2008.
Yep. Yeah. Until
Yeah, yeah.
2015. Yeah.
Yeah, and of course that was completely created by, by the banks and the and mortgage, and it
Yeah,
was a
the housing
horrible time.
mortgage, it affected everybody. And so you need
Yeah.
to find a bread and butter solution. And, you go to FMCG, products. So food is going to go well. Cosmetics
Mm,
is something that people are still going to wash their hair. They're still going to get dressed in the morning. They're still going to spray
mm,
some perfume on themselves. So beauty was a really good pivot at that moment in order to build a business that had sustainability over a decent amount of time. So, yeah.
hmm. And then you got, yeah, what you said there about getting pissed off at the advertising back then and the big margins they were taking. Yeah, and boy, just today we see that this morning, Wall Street Journal, like Facebook is getting fined billion and a half for sending money from, I think it was from US to Europe or the other way around. And yeah, just the margins there are just incredible. So then we move to, of course, something that I'm very interested in is, of course, virtual telekinesis.
Yeah, I think that's more of using your magnetism as a human being to motivate and onboard and get people excited about what you're doing. And more
Hmm.
than anything, it's a Jedi mind tricks, that authentic Jedi mind tricks. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never heard the term before until this, of course, and did many of the employees that were in the fashion industry with you, did they make the pivot with you where you are now at We Do?
Yeah, actually, we have quite a few people who've moved from different project I've been on to make up this team. So, David Jakes was on a project with me in fintech, and met him about, I guess, 4 or 5 years ago. and he joined us. He was the first CFO of PayPal and was former treasurer of Silicon Valley Bank back when they were good to
Ooh,
talk about.
yeah.
And yeah, and so he came on board with Wedo.ai, which is the application that we've built. And then Kirsten Granzo had worked with me on several projects prior to this. So yeah, quite a few from past experience joined up during the late stage of COVID, I guess, early 2021. We started building a super app. So.
Mm. Great employees are great employees, irrespective of the platform or the business, right? Yeah, I find that to be. You have a great story about. Let's talk about about. You got to the point you're so frustrated with these margins and the gig economy, and you thought back to when your father said, "Just be the bank."
Yeah. Yeah, I woke up one morning and it just kind of a download from outer space, which I think, the best ideas feel like they come out of nowhere. For me, it's usually after I've slept for a while and I wake up and I've somehow there's a data dump and I go, okay, here's the revenue model. This is how we can create a new way to build out an infrastructure for such a huge piece of the market. The gig economy, freelance economy, self-employed economy, mobile, remote work represents around $2 trillion globally.
Hmm.
60% of the US workforce are mobile. So we're talking remote work. And that translates across the board into other regions of the world that make up that economy. And so the solution that came to me that seemed evident is, well, why not be a banking fintech infrastructure where you can take money on processing, which is a normal, thing, interchange when people deploy money on their debit cards, and FX, because a lot of people are changing between currencies and they get hit by that. And
Mm.
so that creates multiple streams of revenue, and you can create a SaaS model where it's not pay to play. You can start with freemium, transaction based, move them into a SaaS model where you can create recurring revenue if you're building a type of application that has a value proposition where people can literally run their business through an application. So we call ourselves a social super app built to run your business. And so I guess you consider us like if the likes of, say, Facebook or Clubhouse or LinkedIn had a baby with a bank and then allowed you to go from A to Z and invoice and contract and work with the people you want to work with online remotely. And that's what we built. In theory, it's very simple. There's 4 buttons to run your app. You have your business banking, invoicing and contracting, the calendar to manage your time, groups that you can put together so you can work with the people you need to work with, be it your team, be it remote customers, etc. And then video and audio that allows you to communicate just like you and I are with either an audience or just as a one-to-one. Wrap that all up into an environment that feels like a social network so people aren't overwhelmed, because one thing is a lot of the tools that are out there are so complex. They're really built for enterprise. So small businesses using them is like, it's like, trying to kill a fly with a massive fly swatter. So it's really letting people transact and build their business as they go with a tool that's all in one place. And we found that that's helped with a lot of things. So builds community, and it also keeps you from being quite so distracted, because your average self-employed small business or startup will use up to 10 apps, within an hour,
Wow.
hour and a half, just to get from the point where they onboard all the way through to where they invoice and
Mm.
payment.
So give me an example of specifically of what somebody's remote work would be and how they would use WeDo.
Okay, so I'll give you I'll give you 2 examples. So one would be like Susie, your creative, who maybe she's a UX designer or a developer of some sort. She can come onto the app, build out her portfolio and her profile on the application, schedule a meeting with her incoming client, uh, get job matched within the app or schedule a meeting, goes on a video call, shares her screen, shows her work, gets the job, sends the invoice through the app, gets the contract out. The invoice is timed with how she sets up the contract, so she doesn't have to think about it again. Payment comes in, goes straight into her Wedo debit account. She can take that money and put it in any bank she wants to bank with, or keep it there and use it with her Wedo debit card to pay for her bills for her company or disperse money to her personal account. It's one application. If you're a business or a startup, the way you can look for someone to hire through the application, be matched up, let our AI match you to the skill set you need, pre-screen an interview with interview questions before you're going to go on that call, record that call, help you determine the psychographics of that individual without bias, set up the contract again, how you're going to pay them. Is it weekly, monthly, hourly, whatever? Set up escrow if you need to, disperse that payment, hire cross-border, and then, get the work done that you wanted to hire someone with. The other way your business could use this is also to set up events and video calls where they invite, say, hundreds of customers to showcase the product or the service that they use. Podcaster like yourself, if you're doing a video cast, you can bring on someone like me, record the call, and then repurpose that media across the social media, depending on what your outcome is. Have an audience pay to listen to it very easily through the app.
So you could have said social super app. It's very interesting because it's got traces of Upwork and Fiverr, and you mentioned that the margins there don't favor the creators as well as they do on yours, but it's also social media in that it's creating communities as well.
Absolutely. So if your community is, say you're a coach and you want to charge by the hour and you get your one-to-one, or you build a community out and you want to hold a seminar or a webinar, you can do that through the app. It's a cross between that. The problem with Upwork and Fiverr, let's say, and not just that they take 20% of their income, but they also discourage community. Circumvention is totally wrong. They don't want you to make a phone call outside their app because they rely on that 20% of your income that they're going to take the cut from. That gets passed on. It's unsustainable. It gets passed on to the end customer, which is the client or the business paying that. So. And at the end of the day, it's really slowing the growth of the economy because it's an unnecessary evil. It's not necessary to do that. There are other ways to monetize a platform than to feed off of the lowest common denominator. It's like a race to the bottom with those types of platforms. On the other hand, like sites like LinkedIn, which is being used as lead gen. I don't know how many you get in your inbox, but I get thousands of messages each week in my inbox of people trying to sell me something that is totally not relatable to me. And it's like a waste of my brain time to go through every message. And the other one is outbound, email as well. And if you can create a system where people are matched up based on what they're looking for and how they're looking for, and you can leverage artificial intelligence and machine learning to get a better outcome, then you have the basis of an app that will work for you rather than you doing all the work and catching up with those inboxes. So the premise is to make life easier, to make things make sense within your business, to be approached by the people you actually want to be approached by, and for work and the needs that you need done in that moment in real time or in short term, to move forward within and use technology so you can leverage it rather than become a chore.
What challenges do you have now being the owner and founder of Wedo?
Well, there's a lot of challenges. Meeting revenue targets, making sure my team is hyped up and happy. Raising capital, especially as a female entrepreneur, is always a little more stressful than it is for our male counterpoints sometimes.
Mm.
And really making sure that customers are happy and that we're offering what they need and building it out so that it's both logical, sustainable, and um, happy, for the end customer and the client. You really touching base and having finger on the pulse within a new startup is always important. And then, of course, other things like the market and the forces that are out there that you have to,
Mm.
yeah.
You have some great quotes, Indy, that I want to bring up, that I want to mention and get your feedback on. One of them I really liked was, "Don't take advice from people that you wouldn't want at your table."
Yeah. Yeah. How do you even expound on that? I think that's just common sense.
Yeah.
You don't want to. There are a lot of people out there that are full of ideas and wind, but if you wouldn't want them to be sitting and eating with you, then they're probably not the right people to take advice from.
Yeah, the internet, the social media is full of unsolicited advice, isn't it? And then to filter that out, yeah, it can be tiresome. And you know, everybody likes to. I don't know. We used to say bumper stickers, but there's no more bumper stickers on cars anymore. But right, you and I are pretty much the same age. I think I'm a little older, but that kind of was the logic. But now we just kind of see that quickly with the quick hits on the social media platforms. Persistence beats resistance at all time.
Absolutely, you only lose if you don't give up. There's always a way forward. Life doesn't put you where you are without you having put yourself there in the first place, right? And you're responsible for your actions and how you move yourself forward. So sometimes you have to be gritty and be persistent for sure. Almost
Talking.
all of
I'm
the time.
sorry.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying
all the
all
time.
the time.
Yeah. Yeah, what is the other quote? I forget where I heard, but getting something done is better than the idea, or something.
Yeah.
Something along that line. Yeah, talking about just being a business owner and an entrepreneur. Indeed, talk to me about the difference between management and leadership.
Hmm. The difference between management and leadership. Leaders discuss with you, and managers tell you what to do, how to do
Mm.
it a lot of times. I think that the two can work fine hand in hand. Sometimes you do need to hold people's hands, but I think leadership is about giving people the opportunity to take ownership for their lane and to bring it to fruition. And that gives your people a sense of pride in what they've done and what they've accomplished.
Hmm.
Management seems to be like an old-fashioned word where it's top down. It's like someone standing on a pedestal looking down at you, and the typical cartoon of the guy, the lazy manager who's like telling everyone what to do but doesn't get his hands dirty. Um, I guess for me, that would be the most visual representation
Mm.
difference between the two.
I've had managers that thought they were leaders.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure you have as well, right? There's just a difference. This is a mentality difference. Management has goals and rocks that they have to meet, and leaders look forward and lead. It's just very different there, and it can be tough sometimes talking
A
with
leader is
someone.
someone you want and are happy to follow, that you trust.
Mm.
Huge piece of this, right? A leader is someone you trust that you know is going to have your back. A manager is somebody who just points you in a direction, and if you don't get there, rats you out or gives you a hard time, and don't necessarily give you the feeling that you want to follow them. So I think follow is kind of becomes such a weird thing because of social media now, but
Mm.
become part of that tribe, identify with the culture. A leader makes you proud to wear the t-shirt with the logo on it. It means that you're part of a tribe, that you've got a sense of pride because you worked on something together, and there's a sense of real community and culture within teams that have great leadership. Managers, not necessarily. You may just be a number. The job's worth, that you don't feel that intense pride in what you do. And I think in those types of cultures, you experience a lot of churn. People don't. You're still not working for that guy who was your manager, right? You've done something else. So.
Do you have any tips and any insight on hiring practices?
Ask the right question, listen a lot, listen to what people don't tell you more than they do. Everybody can beat their chest, but you really want to find that conviction of someone who really wants the job because it's something that they want to do, that they, obviously there are jobs out there, and there always will be jobs out there within various sectors of the economy that might not be a job someone wants to do. People don't necessarily sign up to be chief toilet cleaner or whatever that could be. But in general, I think that listen for what's being communicated with a little bit of who cares. Listen more to what's not being communicated, and then listen some more. And don't be afraid to do a third and fourth interview and pass the person around to make sure that they're going to fit within the culture, because if not, you can run into trouble. There are people out there that their sole purpose is to take a check and be disruptive. I mean, they just are. There's good and bad in everyone, and protect your culture at all costs with the people you bring in.
Do you tend to do face-to-face interviews?
Absolutely, yeah. If it's for a key position, I'll fly in, or fly in with the candidate, and it's not unusual for me to spend at least 2 hours in conversation, take them somewhere completely outside of the job just to talk about their philosophy, how they might handle something. And you gain a lot of insight when you're in the physical presence with people. So depending on the type of job and the type of company that you're building, you have to spend a lot of time with these people. So you need to feel like it's going to be good.
Yeah, you certainly do. Yeah, I've been blessed with very, very good employees, and I've had some that, were best parted, and they may start off good. Life changes, and priorities change, and you have to move on. You also talk a lot about finding the right investor and how they have to, while they may have a minority stake, it's still important to make sure values are similar, and you want to sit with them at the table.
Yeah, I think investors can be really key to how you progress in your company. If you're raising capital, it's good to have alignment in terms of what their vision for the end result of the company is, and also to give them a snapshot of where you are as you're moving along. I think that an investor who may have different values could cause you huge heartaches later on down the road if you're not careful. And they, just like with employees, it's good to sit in a room with them and spend time getting to know them.
It's fascinating to me, Indy, that you have like this artistic kind of background, but you're still very much into tech, and you're an entrepreneur. I mean, how much of what you do is, from the day to day now, what we do is like art versus science. Do you have, is there a clash there?
It might, maybe when it comes to user interface, I think, no, I think for me, the roadmap of my life has led me to where I am. I happen to be the type of individual who is extremely analytical, but I also have that creative side to me.
Mm.
And that expresses itself in, like, our
Yes.
mascot and things like that. In terms of branding, I think branding and communication is fascinating. It's something that every company needs to constantly work on, is the value proposition, the look and feel of the brand, but the way it's communicated, the dream that you're selling, the why for what you're doing,
Mm.
the way you can channel that into every piece of an organization is really important. Um, and anything I'm not great at, I don't do.
Mm.
Let's face it, people who are much better than me at working on valuation models, or um, working on how we progress in terms of like percentage of revenue that we may invest in marketing, or the spend that we do on our tech and whatnot. My key role is to go with my gut and to be critical in decision making and pass on the vibe that motivates the rest of leadership, because they're responsible for passing that on to the rest of the organization and to
Mm.
outside investors and potential customers. So I think there's a crossover with everything that I've ever done into where I am today. It's very precise. Like, it's very easy to join the dots, from the past to get to where I am now, and put some dots together for where we would foresee the vision of the future.
Mm. Yeah, you said something very important there that I want to, I work sometimes with, I'm in the tech industry, the service provider specifically, but, and when I work with young entrepreneurs, young business owners, delegation is a very, very difficult thing for them. It gets down to where, they want to order the pizza. India. I said, look, somebody else can order the pizza.
Yeah.
Delegation is very tough because they just don't have a trust, and that I can do it my way and it'll be right. And the 80-20 rule, if you can get somebody else to do it, 80% of what you can do it. But it's very tough for them to kind of let go and let others do things that they're better at.
Yeah, I think that's true at the really early stages of any company. There's a point where the founder has an idea that needs fleshed out. And
Mm.
if you're not delegating yet, you probably don't need those people who are on your team in the first place yet, because
Good point.
you haven't got the baby ready to go to school, right?
Mm.
I'm not going to send the baby to school just after I've given birth, right? You're gonna nurse it a little bit. You make sure it's growing okay. You're gonna give it, you know, some clothes. Make sure it's eating its stuff. Then you get to the point where you take it to school, and the other teachers come around. It's like, oh, I got to give this baby up. It's time for you to do that. And I think this is the issue: is that for many founders in the early stages of the company, is understanding at what point can you let go. If you're letting go too early, it can all go haywire. You have to protect the baby and the vision. If you let go too late, you're just going to get kicked out the door, because
Mm.
you're not letting people you're not getting out of the way enough to let people do what they're great at. And there's a little dance to be done within the early
Sure.
stages of from the process of innovation, where the idea lands at your table, to where you're taking that first stages, let's say, into prototype, into saying, okay, now we need to work on this MVP. We need to let the real dogs come in, and we need to
Mm.
work on this business model, and what's the best way to test our SaaS model or do our marketing. That's when you need to let people do their job. But there's a little bit of spoon feeding, especially if it's something that is innovating or way different than some of the models that are out there. You're going to run into that. There are some founders, unfortunately, and I've worked with a lot of them, are so precious that they're never going to give it up. It's like, if it's their way and the highway, and they're not necessarily Elon Musk, or they're not like a big visionary, and you can tell that, like, they're just seriously getting too granular and trying to want to know everything about what everybody's doing. It's like, it's a lost cause. You're going to have to say, sorry, you're not flexible enough for me to work with you, because it's impossible. So I think it's a matter of people, founders especially, being honest with themselves.
There's so many elements. Time, just
Yeah.
Just the timeliness and just patience and, might I also say discipline. So, when I started my business in the 90s, Indy, I was working, I was working 14, 16 hours a day. I wasn't paying attention to my health. I got very heavy. And the doctor said to me, if you don't lose the weight, you're not going to see your daughter graduate. So she had just been born. So that's all I needed to hear. So over the next year, I lost 130 pounds. And people ask me how. And I always say discipline. Right. That's
Yeah.
it, people. There's no secret. I know it's a $1 billion industry or $1 trillion industry. So tell me how discipline plays a role in your life, Indy.
I really am. I kind of my life revolves around structure. So I'm completely unconventional. I'm not your typical used to be rock star who stays up all night and I don't know, drinks a bottle of whiskey or anything like that. I go to bed at around 8 p.m., 9 p.m. Not unlikely for me to wake up at 3 or 4. My life is ruled by my calendar. I have certain days where I take meetings, other days where I really work on things that are highly important. And I try to structure my life around clean eating and, getting some exercise. And so I keep some animals around me to make sure I have to. So I've got a couple dogs and the odd fat cat like this one that
Yeah.
just the fun.
Yeah, it's our come in, yeah. Oh.
He's a one-eyed cat. So
Oh.
I think it's just there's no such thing as work-life balance in a startup. It's not unusual for you to end up working some 12-hour days and spending some of your weekends where you're working. It's about finding your biorhythm, your balance. And I think, a lot of founders, if you can take an hour nap in the afternoon because you need that extra energy or that lights on moment, or especially when you're under pressure, call me a pacifist, but I'll just go sleep for an hour and go,
Mm.
bang, we're going to do this. I'm on it. Get yourself refreshed. But yeah, it's a grind. It's not for everybody. You have to, if you want to get through it, you need to be extremely disciplined and persistent. And it's one step after the other. You get one thing done, you move to the next thing, and you be very methodical about how you use your time, because there's a lot of time wasters out there, right? I mean, that's at the end of the day, there's a lot of time wasters. So you need to really be very precious about your time. Sorry.
Absolutely. I like to you kinda started with you started with structure and when I have young people that are frustrated with their job and they talk to me about starting a new business, I always start with just kind of discouragement. I mean, you have a mortgage, you have kids, you have, just make sure you're getting a regular paycheck now. I
Mhm.
almost try to make them think it out and they have to earn it a little bit. When I started my business, I didn't have a car payment. I was just living at my parents' house. I had so it was not that difficult for me. There wasn't much to lose,
Mhm.
but because yeah, how long can you go without a salary? Is what I ask. How long? Well, I got enough for a couple of months. I said, I went a year and a half. It's not easy, and what I think 50% of businesses fail in the first 5 years. I think it was a statistic that I heard or something like that. I mean, it's it's not it's not easy, and you just have to. Warren Buffett has a great quote. What did he say? He said, "An idiot with a plan always beats a genius without one."
Yeah.
Right. So you have to have a plan, and you have to stick to it. And
Mhm.
I believe discipline's a part of it, as you do as well. I believe.
Yeah, I think discipline and an execution of the plan, making sure
Mm,
that plan is realistic and that you can execute on it. Then I think also one of the points that you brought up about younger people who have a salary, I
mm,
always suggest that they perhaps there's a million ways you can generate revenue. So start a side hustle and do that in your free time.
mm,
Make that hobby, and generate consistent revenue or generate consistent work towards a product you're building. If you're in tech, for example, then make the switch over when it makes sense for you. Raise some capital if you need to, get it to a point where you have some customers, you've got market viability, you've tested, and you know that this is, there's some traction here. There's some leading data that really points towards the possibility of this becoming successful. Then transition slowly from having that day job into building your business and save some money. Because there's been plenty of times in my life where I'm like 2 seconds away from the lights going out because I've not saved enough money to get me through a year or year and a half where I might not be able to take a salary in my new endeavor, or especially if you're going into music, you never know when you're going to get paid till somebody in advance or whatever that may be. But yeah, you're right. It's discipline, it's execution, you better choose something that you really, really are super freaking passionate about.
Yeah.
You really need
Yeah.
because that's what's going to get you up in the morning, So.
Yeah, Simon Sinek, right? Why do you want to start your business? Why? Tell me, well, I want to be, rich and successful. I said, well, don't start a business then. Have a good reason why and move from there. I've been really fortunate. You have as well. But it's just luck. There's a lot of luck involved. I've got great employees. I've got great customers. It's just, there's so many elements there. It's tough to, be humble about it. I remember when I first started my business, I had my buddies say, "Hey, it must be so great not to have a boss. That must be the best." So look, I have more bosses now than I've ever had. Every one of my clients is a boss. Don't go into business thinking you won't have a boss.
Yeah.
You have even your employees at some level are your boss. The banks, the vendors. I mean, don't think that, you can't tell people to go screw off, because then they won't do business with you or they'll leave you. And it's not as liberating as you feel. Indiana, Gregg, what motivates you?
The possibility to change people's lives in a really positive way. I believe in creating products and services that have a real impact on people's lives or create opportunities. And so those are the businesses that I've really gone, stuck my neck out and said, okay, I'll go down with this shit. And I think that's really critical for me. I really believe in building value that can really change sometimes even society or the way people access certain types of technologies. And that motivates me because it just keeps my mind really active and makes me really hungry to continue to innovate, I think that's the biggest one for me.
And how do you measure success?
On how many lives I can change, how many people come back through and say, back in the day when you did this, it had a real impact. You don't know how close I was to shutting down my business, or how close I was to, giving up, or whatever that's been. And I think, especially with an application like we do, the core value is that it creates a mechanism, if you will, for people, no matter where you are in your business walk, to pick it up without a paywall and to actually create that side hustle, create that new business that you're dreaming about, create that community, and not be spread all over the place. It helps you maintain your focus. And I hope that's going to be life-changing for millions of people. And that motivates me every morning to get up and go for it. It really does.
Oh, that's wonderful, Indy. Yeah, it is. It is something when you help friends, you help colleagues, and they do well, and even if you're just a tiny, tiny part of it, it just helps. It's wonderfully inspiring. Indy, thank you so much for your time today. This was absolutely wonderful. How can we get in touch with you?
Well, go download the app, wedo.ai. In the United States, we're 3/4 way production version. You can play around, do a video call. We're hooking up the banking stuff. In the UK, you can already create a debit card, in the rest of Europe, and start transacting. And just come and hang out with us. Join join our channels and send me a message that's not a spam, but really like, yeah. Send me a non-spam message about something great about you and what you do. That would be cool.
Indeed, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. If I ever make it out there to London, I watch a lot of football out there. But if I do make it, perhaps we can have a cup of coffee. And thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Give me a shout when you're in London for sure. Thanks a lot.
Sounds good. You be well. Cheers.
You too. Bye.
Thank you for listening and/or viewing Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations.